I'd like to introduce Tim Lucas and Gary Fitzgerald from Queensland Fisheries. We've given them a permit to enter Victoria, but only for a weekend. Tim Lucas is a Senior Fisheries Manager at Fisheries Queensland. He manages freshwater fisheries and aquaculture across the Sunshine State. Gary Fitzgerald's a passionate rec fisher and advocate for recreational fishing in Queensland. He's been involved with fish stocking for more than 30 years and is the coordinator of the Brisbane River Cod Recovery Strategy. Tim and Gary will be discussing cod fishing in Queensland, stocking trevally, and the recovery of the Murray River cod. Please welcome Tim and Gary.
Thanks, guys. So just briefly, for a bit of introduction, the main difference we have in our fishing scene, I think, in terms of certainly resources in Queensland, we don't have a rec fishing licence. And, you know, cost of living crisis, I think it's very difficult for politicians to give money away for fishing. So we have a very small team in Fisheries Queensland. Half of my time goes towards freshwater fishing, fishery management. And so I have a PhD in aquaculture and genetics. 10 years, most of my career has been spent on aquatic biosecurity, with a couple of years working on pest fish management before I came across to fisheries. Christelle Legrand, can you put your hand up, please? Wherever Christelle, there's Christelle. So Christelle manages our SIPS program, which is Stocked Impoundment Permit Scheme. So we get about $1 million a year for our 63 impoundments across Queensland, which turns out to be not all that much, but most of that goes towards fish going into water bodies. So I'll go through a little bit of the work. We've got a huge, I feel like I know some people think that Queenslanders are about 20 years behind anyway, but that's how I felt watching the talk this morning. We're at the bottom of that curve. We've got a long way to go. We certainly have some ambitions to get there in the fullness of time. Gary Fitzgerald. So a little secret to let you in on, it's Gary's birthday today. So we went out to see some karaoke last night. So I was thinking about getting you to sing Happy Birthday, but I don't want to hear any more people from Shepparton singing. So we just do a Happy Birthday, Gary, all right? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Gary. Thank you very much. All right, good stuff, Gary. Thank you. All right, that should hopefully wake you up a little bit. So one of the things that happens, I'll press the green arrow button. When we don't have a lot of people within fisheries ourselves, we work a lot with our stakeholders. Gary's one of those stakeholders. Oh, by the way, get him a drink if you see him at the pub, because he's not allowed in licensed venues in Queensland, so take the opportunity. I'll just give you an overview of our ambitions for threatened fish recovery. So 10 in 10, people in Queensland are looking at that and thinking that's amazing, and we're aiming for it. So we need to get the political support, but we have an opportunity now with the new government, and hopefully we'll be pushing it as hard as we can. We've got some really exciting new species that we're trialling. Big eye trevally, giant trevally, and jungle perch. We've done mangrove jack previously, they're still in the pipeline. But there's, I think, some really exciting different types of fishing. I won't say better than Murray cod because I'll get beaten up. But and then a project that another lot of our volunteers have done with zero budget, that it made an incredible difference to one of our impoundments in Leslie Dam. So just briefly, this is really important. If anyone has any ideas, information just to help us with this journey, that we're, you know, obviously at the start of a big mountain to climb. Gary will tell you a little bit more about the Murray River Cod program. That's the most easy choice in the world. That'll be probably the first cab off the rank as long as we can get it going. That's been part of restocking for a long time, but we need to really supercharge it to get that going. In Queensland, all of our hatcheries that contribute to stocking are privately operated. There's about 18 of those hatcheries, and then the stocking itself is done by volunteer stocking groups. So we have a limited role in just oversight of that scheme. But yeah, we are keen to work all the way across from Victoria, New South Wales to Queensland, and we're hoping that we can attract a little bit more interest from the federal government and anyone who wants to partner with that work, with the 10 in 10 concept. Trevally stocking trial. So if you didn't know, both big eye trevally and giant trevally are actually fresh. They tolerate fresh water really well. They won't reproduce in fresh water, which makes it a safe option, that we're not going to make irreversible environmental harm. There's been a whole lot of reaction from all sorts of people when this got announced. But the funny thing is, these are native. The places we're going to put them, they natively would have occurred there if it hadn't been for the barriers that got in their way. So we think it's a really good opportunity. It's not going, so the way we're going to do it, first we've got to work out whether they spawn well enough. That's happening imminently as we speak. 2 dams we're using to trial them at with a small number. We need to work out whether they have an impact on the native fish, whether it's the prey in the dam or whether they're eating the barramundi or other fish. We're actually going to do some of that acoustic tracking that you saw earlier to work out whether they're going upstream or where they're travelling within the dams, how fast they grow. Do some surveys on the anglers' experience from that, because we think that they're going to actually provide a really different type of fishery, especially in winter. And the spawning's happening now. So I'll race through this. Jungle perch. Jungle perch is not so imperiled in northern Queensland. If you've ever seen one of these fish, they're super curious. They'll come up and look at you. They're very intelligent fish, and they're very popular as an angling species, super hungry, charged lures. They've been pushed out of most of southern Queensland where they used to be prevalent, and most of that's due to waterway barriers and water quality problems. And their habitat, so they need salt water to spawn. So they're in a freshwater recirc hatchery at the moment, but it's got salt water component for the spawning. So same sort of thing, evaluate all their growth, survival, movement, catchability, impact on other species including prey. There's 29 jungle perch broodstock. Most of those you get them from Fraser Island. There's a tiny little creek on the eastern side of Fraser Island, or Gary as it's called nowadays. And that's about the only reliable place we can get the southern strain of jungle perch. But hopefully there's big things to come. And the cod habitat at Leslie Dam. So it's a good lesson to learn that while there's drought, take the opportunity, because you couldn't have got these big pipes and rocks installed while there was water in the dam. So they got the heavy infrastructure in place while they had a chance of really super low water. 700 culverts installed. So Greg Ringwood, some of you might know, he's a mad keen fisher. He's also employed by the Commonwealth, but this was part of just a volunteer project by the Fish Stocking Association. They got lots of material donated, and what they've achieved is really amazing. And now we're seeing the fruits of that. We're seeing heaps of visitation to that dam and heaps of catches. I saw Greg the other day and he said he caught 10 fish in a session. They know where the fish are hanging out at these pipes. And they think that they've increased by about 7-fold the number of cod that hold in that dam. Apart from the economic benefit, which is one of the things I'm trying to push with my management. Righto, and it's over to Gary. Green button.
Thanks, mate. Robbie, you mentioned abs before. It's not abs, it's one ab, mate. Only one. I appreciate Victorian Fisheries giving us the opportunity to come down here, and Queensland Government for giving me a junket for the weekend. Thank you very much. Is there a camera on? Thanks, Dallas. There was, I'm going to talk about the Brisbane River cod, a little bit about that. So, Stu Rowlands, if you have a chat to Stu, he did a lot of the research through there. Legend, thank you very much for some of the work. He'll fill in the gaps. I'm probably going to not have this exactly right, but somewhere the Murray cods jumped over the Great Divide and probably landed somewhere in the Clarence River. And over time, they've kind of island hopped their way north up into some of the Queensland rivers. So they've adapted a little bit differently. There was a Brisbane River cod through. Now, Taylor mentioned this morning through some of the reasons they've got challenges on cod species, all pretty much the same. We pretty much wiped out the Brisbane River cod, was extinct by 1940, gone through mining, cyanide being dropped in, land clearing, barriers, water extraction. Early settlers, they lived off cod. I read some of the accounts of the journals of the first white people to go up the Brisbane River, and they spoke about cod were that plentiful you could just walk out, pick up a stick and spear them. They were just everywhere. The main biomass in that Brisbane River catchment. So there's only one reason, it's us that they're extinct. But a little bit about those guys. What we've been doing is, and I'll come to the Mary River cod, because they're extinct, we've got no genetics. Queensland Museum's got one specimen of a Brisbane River cod. It's been sitting in formalin for about 100 years, so there's no viable DNA on that specimen at all for us to get any baseline to compare it to the eastern cod from Stu's area or the Mary River cod in other areas. But to give you a bit of an idea, that's a Mary River cod. The one down the bottom, he's 920 long, and that was 12 kilograms. So you can see they've kind of evolved into their own kind of thing. Now that was the habitat. We got a couple of little pockets of pretty good habitat right up the top. So where you guys with the Murray cod, and we got 23% of the Murray-Darling basins in Queensland, we've got the long, slow, warm water rivers up there. But these coastal cod, the higher rainfall, the waterways, there was some of the early explorers described having to use lanterns to navigate up these waterways at lunchtime. So triple layer canopy of trees, rainforest situations, things like that. So the water was cooler, clearer, but not really long river systems. So we saw what it was like then, and you can see what it's like now. So heavily de-treed. If there was a tree worth taking, they took it, and if it wasn't any good for construction, they took it for firewood. Really decimated a lot of our upper catchments. And then obviously a lot of regulation. So one of the major tributaries of the Brisbane River, it's probably the most flogged out, clapped out, over-abused, over-allocated waterway in Queensland. Should probably be a river in its own right, the Lockyer Creek. It's got 20 individual barriers and 3 dams on it, and it's ploughed to within a foot of the edge of that riverbank. Well, it's dead. So we don't bother too much with the Lockyer Creek, but there's other areas where we can make a difference, and that's what we're trying to do. So there's been a Mary River cod recovery project on the Mary River proper, and I'll show you a little bit about the Mary River itself shortly. That's been running since about 1990-something. The federal government jumped in and they did something because we're dealing with an endangered species, so that should trigger the feds to get involved. They did something for about 5 years and they said, okay, we've done our bit, we're out. And they never, because in the Brisbane catchment and other catchments in southeast Queensland, all those rivers that feed into Moreton Bay, because the cod were extinct, there was nothing to recover, so they didn't bother doing anything at all. So in 2019, we had a Mary River Codference, and it wasn't open to the public. It was just the scientists and stakeholders had a catch up. And we decided, what are we going to do? Are we going to have a crack at this in southeast Queensland? We acknowledged we needed a apex predator back in our waterways to restore that balance. So we said, right, let's have a crack, and we'll see what we can't do about getting the Brisbane River back with the cod. I'm a bit of a play on words. I did that, but I'm allowed to because I'm not government. I get away with it. So as if they're not a thylacine, we're not bringing them back from extinction. We're going to replace them with their closely related cousin, the Mary River cod. So the Mary River catchment, it runs north-south. It's only got one main river trunk, but we've got a whole stack of smaller tributaries. Now, because it runs fairly close to the coast, it gets a lot of rainfall. Some of those tributaries are where they're getting the most success in restoring, so a restocking program. They're getting them to take through there. No evidence yet of habitation. They're getting growth out of the fingerlings. and egg laying. And there was a news article just in the last week. They filmed some cod in logs sitting on eggs, but no evidence of recruitment yet. So there's a couple of challenges there in that we've got another really good species of fish in Queensland called the sooty grunter, and these things are black tanks. If you ever go into North Queensland, try and catch one. These things go. They are absolute aggro. Some idiot 20 years ago has let some go in the Mary River, and they're reproducing really well, and they're out competing the Mary River cod. So that could be the nail in the coffin for the Mary River cod itself, with these sooty grunter overpopulating. And your carp, no one here likes carp, no? Why do you see tilapia and pearl cichlids? Coming hopefully never to you guys, but keep an eye on them. They're far more aggressive, the pearl cichlid especially. You've probably heard about tilapia. The pearl cichlids are far more tolerant of cooler water and bigger ranges, and a little bit more aggressive as well. And currently, I believe over 100 species of cichlids are still allowed to be imported for aquarium tanks. So if anyone's ever writing letters to politicians, get onto that because that's how we're getting them. These are fish tank aquarium fish that people let go. Anyway, fingerlings from the Mary River cod. Currently there's 4 commercial hatcheries allowed to breed them. They're allowed 12 broodstock each. One hasn't bothered for 10 years. He's just got other things going on in his life. One's got really good wild broodstock from the Mary River, and 2 others have got F1 fish that have been bred from the wild, released in the Brisbane or the Albert or the Logan River, and grown up to be adults. We've electrofished them or caught them and taken them back to other hatcheries to reproduce. Risk of inbreeding is pretty bad, but we've got a full genetics analysis happening very, very soon that'll tell us how bad we've got it and give us a bit of a stud book on which boys need to go with which girls. But we haven't got a great deal to work with. The Mary River cod, there was less than, Stu, I think, estimated there's less than 600 individual fish. That was about 30 years ago. So we haven't got a really big genetic database to work from. So what are the other things we do? We can yell yee-haw and pour as many Mary River cod in there as we can. Generally, that's been the plan from the start, but there's other things we need to do. We've got to address the reasons why they're extinct. Obviously, we've stopped the mining and a lot of the fishing with explosives. That was pretty common back in the day. Chuck a stick of jelly in and blow the whole thing up and catch whatever floats. Lazy buggers. But there's other things. So, our group, we're into a lot of riparian veg replanting and aquatic plants. So on the right-hand side, that's Vallisneria or Val, also called eelgrass, and a lot of planting of various. We grow a lot ourselves as well. So all different sorts. It's not just, you see a lot of planting days in our area, and it's all up on the flat ground. It's all just lamandra and ukes because they think it's all about koalas. And because of workplace health and safety, they're not allowed down on the toe of the water. So our guys, we just get down on the toe of the water. We do where the koala guys can't plant. The other thing, barriers. So they're 2 of the barriers that I mentioned on one creek, on Lockyer Creek. So back in the 40s and 50s, they knew that fish needed to migrate. You see those fish ladders on each of them? Well, they don't work. They're designed for salmonoids. They didn't know any different. But so we work with or lobby about getting barriers removed or retrofitted or whatever we can do to try and help any native fish passage. So they're the challenges we're up against. There's also, we've got an estimated 70,000 barriers in Queensland and about 10,000 in my area of just even culvert crossings and things like that are blocking fish migration. So we're out there working with, I work with 5 different local government authorities, Department of Environment and Fisheries team on trying to get something done about all sorts of barriers, big and small. So there's one project on the Bremer River, which is in Ipswich, just west of Brisbane. That was about a 4 metre high weir, and they managed to do a bit of a dog leg. You'll see it goes backwards and forwards, but it snakes its way through. So that was a great little project there, and all of a sudden we're getting diadromous species upstream of that haven't been there for 50, 60 years. So that's great. We're getting striped gudgeons and bull routes, and bass are getting up there on their own. So we don't need to stock anymore. So that's the ultimate end game that we're hunting for. Stocking's the last case scenario because the risk of stuffing up our genetics is really, really bad. So anyway, other habitat. Now, I'm pretty up there on social media. I see a lot of stuff happening in Victoria, New South Wales. There's stuff going on in Queensland about adding woody debris, logs, that sort of stuff into waterways, which is great. There's a lot of CMAs in Victoria. I really love seeing all that sort of stuff. It inspires us guys. We're a community group, so we don't have access to big dollars or heavy equipment. So you'll see the pipes there on the right-hand side. That's Suamax or Black Max pipe. We've engaged with local councils and civil contractors. Those lengths, I can pick one up on each shoulder. So we get hold of that stuff and we chain it into the water with trees. We attach Besser bricks to the end to keep them up off the bottom. So we're putting those in the water, and we can throw 5 or 10 of them in our boat and deploy them in a couple of hours. And we've had them go through floods and not move at all. So that's really good. So we're adding some spawning habitat for our cod, and it's an education thing. We're getting some other woody debris. We're probably a decade behind where you guys are, but we're having a crack, and it seems to be flavour of the month up in Queensland right now. It's all about fish hotels right now. So I got a lot of people trying to throw a lot of money at me right now, but anyway, we'll do the best we can. So fish care and protection. Now, we've all heard from a lot of really smart people here today, take care of the fish, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to repeat all that. A couple of things that I didn't see any photos of today. Look at this wombat holding this fish up vertical. That fish is dead. Might as well cut its throat, fillet it and take it home. If you're going to stretch out a 5-6 kilo fish like that, you're going to tear all its guts. Not going to die in the next hour, but somewhere in the next week, it's not going to be doing real good and it's probably going to float. So keep the fish in the water, barbless, all the good stuff. You all know it. I'm just preaching to the converted. Something that I'm not sure you all. I've only become aware of something recently. These nets. So a fish's tail will push through those, and it'll split the tail. Now we've had evidence of splitting the tail right up to the wrist of the cod's tail or a bass and stuff like that. If they get that split right up there, they can get an infection, and we've had fatalities. So Australian bass tournaments, the ABT guys have actually just banned them, specifically these nets in all of their tournaments because of the split tail issue. So they're trying to care for their fish. So what we found is the fine mesh, the EnviroNet style, can be pushed through. They're a bit harder to push through the water, but if you want the fish to swim away and survive, have a think about some of the lander nets you're using. And our end goal, we don't want to be stocking fish forever. So we've got a clear end goal, and that means we want to restore the habitat. We want to get our woody debris back in the water, try and get some of the silt out of some of our deeper pools, get the shade back on the water, and get these things. So we're restocking a hell of a lot of fingerlings. We want to grow them to adulthood. We know we've got some to adulthood now. We've got really good growth rates. We want to see them spawning, get recruitment, and then once we've got that and we got the numbers up, we want to be able to step back and let them do their own thing, because they'll never, the genetics won't improve while ever we keep putting fingerlings in there. So again, I want to thank everyone from Victorian Fisheries for the invitation coming down, and thank you all. If you want to have a chat, I think we're on a break now, Gus. Come and have a chat. I'm keen to talk about all our native fish. Thank you very much.